All right, we will get started in just a minute, waiting for people to join. Our group is very timely. We've already got a good number of people on right at 11 or my time 11. So that's great. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes to let more people in and then we can get started. All right. Well, I think we can kick it off. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Joyce Anderson. We are super excited to invite our guest speakers to discuss name, image, and likeness, aka NIL. These are real life experts living NIL right now. So I think you're really going to enjoy learning about their experiences and what NIL might mean for you. We're going to do quick intros. So Darby Carr from Fusion Global Academy, do you want to be our first intro?
Perfect. Thanks so much, Joyce. As Joyce said, my name's Darby Carr. I am the president of virtual services at Fusion. And at the same time, I'm also the parent of 2 Division I athletes. Andrew's with us here today. I have 4 kids in total, and he is a junior at Wake Forest University playing on their basketball team. And then my daughter is a freshman at Purdue University playing on their volleyball team. So excited to share our experiences with NIL and what it's been like as a parent with high school students being recruited and getting to really great schools and having a really great opportunity to not only get a great education, but then also benefit from NIL.
Awesome. Andrew, you want to go next?
Yeah, that works great. So hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here to talk to you guys about this. But my name is Andrew Carr, and as my mom said, I am a junior at Wake Forest University playing basketball. And that means I graduated in 2020 from high school, and I spent my first 2 years of college playing basketball at University of Delaware. And then last year, I just transferred to Wake Forest and just finished my first season there and have 2 more years of eligibility left because of COVID happening my freshman year of college.
Thanks for that intro. And Tim.
Great. Thanks, Joyce. Nice to see everybody today. Thank you for inviting us to join this webinar with Darby and Andrew and Joyce. We appreciate it. I'm Tim Prukop. I'm the co-founder and president at Eccker Sports, which is a company that we started 2 years ago to offer educational resources and expertise around name, image, and likeness, particularly for the high school market and in some ways some in the college market. And so what we've done, we've assembled a team of 12 people that get up every day with the sole purpose of trying to be on the front edge of what's happening and vet all of the things that are out there so that our partners get timely vetted information on a real time. And so we're dealing with state high school athletic associations, coaches associations, high schools, districts all over the country, helping to manage the complexities of name, image, and likeness, and then helping student athletes figure out how to maximize their NIL opportunities and maintain their eligibility to play. So really happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Joyce Anderson. I am co-founder of Honest Game. We are software backed by experts on academic eligibility. And our goal is to make sure that every student athlete who has a dream of playing college sports has that opportunity to take advantage of it. It's something that's not very well understood. We work with hundreds of schools across the country, thousands, hundreds of thousands of students and parents and school staff, counselors, athletic directors, coaches, and the whole goal is to get everybody on the same page. to understand what academic requirements they need to meet. And unfortunately, people don't understand it, so they assume they're good. And then they find out very late in the game, sometimes senior year, sometimes freshman year of college, that they're ineligible. And so academic eligibility, we're going to talk about it throughout because it kind of weaves into the NIL story. But the key thing to think about is if you're not playing because you're not eligible, no one is really going to be interested in offering NIL. So something to consider and think about as we talk about NIL and as you go through your journey. Tim, you want to cover a quick summary of Eccker?
Yeah, and as I discussed, so our goal is to provide information and stuff for people so that they can make good decisions about what to do with name, image, and likeness. There's 27 states that allow high school athletes to participate in name, image, and likeness and participate in high school athletics. And then, of course, at the universities across the country, that's the case. And so we provide educational resources. We have video series. We have checklists and all kinds of things for people to watch. We have a resource hub, which is up-to-date vetted information on a daily basis that has everything from the state high school bylaws to the college NIL policies and procedures for every university in every state, all the way through the state laws that are in effect. And then we provide a lot of tools to coaches and parents, checklists, frequently asked questions, video summaries about how to take advantage of name, image, and likeness and do it and maintain your eligibility. So if you go to eckersports.com, you have the opportunity to have access to all of that information.
Thank you. And Darby, do you want to give a quick summary of Fusion?
Absolutely. So at Fusion, we do school every single day, but there's something really different and unique about it. If you can imagine being in a classroom where it's just one student and one teacher and what that would be like, it's really the power of what we do. We do it in buildings across the country. So we have 80 schools across the country. We have a 100% virtual school, so you can take your classes one-on-one with a teacher virtually from anywhere. And then we have a more traditional virtual program where you work more independently and a teacher is there to support you and help you along the way when you're taking classes with our Global Anytime program. And so we offer classes at all different levels. And really at the heart of what we do is something called Love, Motivate, Teach. It's our teaching philosophy. So we really focus on the social and emotional needs of the students. We know how hard it is to be a student and athlete in high school, wanting to get to play at the collegiate level. Eligibility, there's so many stories we could tell of the students that we've helped actually to get to the point that they were eligible because they found out either in their junior year or senior year, as Joyce said, at the finish line, that they weren't eligible. So we're here to help with that. And we're offering actually to folks today a 20% discount on our summer courses. So pick up your cell phone, take a quick screenshot of that QR code, or go to our website and we'll be happy to help you in any way we can.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think that's super valuable because summer school is a really great time to fix issues. And the earlier you address them, the better position you'll be in, the less stress. We're going to be answering questions at the end of the session, but please drop them into the chat as we go. I will make a note that Andrew, one of our guest speakers, does have to leave to get to class early. So that's what it's all about, right? Like understanding what that real life situation is for student athletes trying to balance academics, athletics, NIL, all the commitments. So Andrew, we're super grateful that you're here. So if you have specific questions for Andrew, we will address them as we go. But the rest of the questions we'll address at the end. So let's kick it off. Super excited to have you all here. For Andrew, I'd love to just kind of get an understanding. I'm sure our listeners would love to know, what has NIL been like for you? How did it begin? What are the opportunities that you're currently engaging with, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so first off, I would say NIL just came to light when I was a freshman at University of Delaware. So there, at that time, it was a lot of unknown for a lot of different schools and what you were able to do. And like you said, eligibility is super important with this. So trying to be able to gauge what you are able to do and what you're not able to do. But for me, when I was at Delaware, it wasn't something that was super quickly moving. So I mean, they just released their collective a couple weeks ago. They have a Blue Hen collective at Delaware. But when I got here to Wake Forest, they were a little bit farther along the line in NIL. And one thing that they did for us was an open doors marketplace. And it's pretty cool. It's basically an app, a company that sets up deals for you. There's like, you can scroll through and try to sign up with different things to be able to pursue. Like I said, they have some Snapchat deals that are, it's just basically like a huge marketplace that you can scroll through and decide what you want to represent. And then also there's the ability for other companies to look on Open Doors and see my profile or see any of my teammates' profiles and reach out to us and say, hey, we would love for you to have an opportunity to do this. So for example, for me, a small law firm just reached out recently and was just like, hey, I would love to come to Wake Forest and shoot a quick commercial with you. And they just kind of give you the details there, and it makes it super easy. And you know, like you said, as a student trying to balance NIL, trying to balance sports, trying to balance like the classroom as well, that makes it a lot easier to be able to take advantage of NIL if people are searching for you and you only have one spot to go to search for them. So right now it's been great, and I am excited to see what else I can do this next year.
So when you get a lawyer to reach out like that, do you have an agent or an attorney? How do you manage that?
So I don't have an agent personally, but what you can usually do, we have different NIL, or the Wake Forest does, and we're very lucky to be able to have these people, but there are specific people with the job of an NIL like advisor. So I can go to them, and I already have and said, hey, this is what they sent to me. What do you think? Do you think that it's something I should represent, or kind of along those lines? And they're able to walk me through that process and help me, and they have been able to do that. And they make it really easy about whether it's something that I should be looking into or whether it's something I shouldn't be.
Cool. So Darby, listening to one of your children talking about all the commitments that he has, what was it like for you as a parent watching, you know, your young adult going through this process?
I think the biggest challenge, and I'm sure Tim is living this every single day, is that the NCAA came out while he was at Delaware, while Lizzie was being recruited for Purdue, and said, okay, now kids can benefit in high school, in college, from their own name, image, and likeness, and they can benefit financially. And so they made those statements and came out with it, but there were not details about how this is going to happen, what the regulations are, who's going to regulate it. So was the University of Delaware going to come up with policies and regulate it, or was the actual the team or the conference that Andrew was playing in, which was the Colonial Athletic Association, were they going to regulate it? Was the NCAA actually going to come out with additional rules? So it was a black box of uncertainty. And so we took a position as a family to kind of sit back and watch. And Delaware, as Andrew said, was a little slow to the take. They were very uncertain and didn't put the resources into getting the answers that Wake Forest did. So when Andrew went in the transfer portal last year, it was a great opportunity for us because we met a lot of experts. We got to meet a lot of people who knew more about it than we did, and we got educated very fast. And so I feel now like I'm much more competent, but I would encourage parents, kids who want to understand it better, go to the resources like Eccker Sports and their website and the things that they've put together to try to support folks. and seek those out so that you can really understand it better. And also recognize that it's all still new. And so it's changing.
Awesome. Tim, Andrew had mentioned a collective. Some people may not know what that is. Would you mind kind of giving a quick summary of what that means?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I'd love to know, Andrew, how much NIL played in a factor for you going to Wake Forest versus other places that you might have had. That would be interesting to know. But what the Supreme Court ruled in the 2021 Alston case was that the NCAA was over restrictive in the educational benefits that student athletes could make, and they were restricting in what they referred to as unreasonable restrictions on what an athlete can earn. And so that was what opened the door for NIL. But all they said was that you couldn't prohibit kids from making money off of their name, image, and likeness. They offered no real guidance as to what that would look like, except for the fact that you couldn't use that name, image, and likeness to recruit somebody. You couldn't use name, image, and likeness to pay for performance on the field or the court, and that third-party groups could not be involved in the recruiting process. Those were the three things the NCAA said, and then they said, and other than that, you guys figure it out. And part of that was because there was a bunch of state laws that had already been voted in that would allow it. So what each of the schools had to do is then think, okay, we as an athletic department at the time, we can't go out and create our own NIL opportunities for student athletes because the NCAA prohibited that. So they started creating these third-party groups that became known as collectives. And so what happens there is a group of alumni will come together. They'll form an LLC corporation. They'll have a banking account associated to it. They'll raise funds or solicit funds from other donors and boosters and get that money put into the collective. And then the money that's in the collective would be distributed to student athletes based on activities that they did, like as Andrew's described, whether they go sign an autograph or they post something on social media. And so those collectives are third-party organizations that are operated separate from the athletic department right now. Although there's a lot of obviously conversations happening back and forth. So that's how the collective is set up in most of these universities. And Open Doors is the software platform that a majority of the collectives use to create the marketplace so that the money comes into the bank account, it sits in there in the Open Doors program. A sponsor, booster, whoever says, hey, I want this athlete for this thing. And then if that athlete accepts that opportunity, then they get paid out of that bank account once the Open Doors says that the activity is completed. So that's how they function.
Awesome. And Andrew, I'd love if you don't mind sharing, was that something you considered when you were transferring?
Yeah, I think when you're going through that type of quick recruitment process, everybody's trying to get at you, convince you to go there with anything that they have. So for me, the NIL in my recruitment process was more about the opportunities available, not necessarily them when they were recruiting me saying, you can hear, I promise we'll get you this, this, and this, but basically explaining to me through that process of, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we want to do in the future for NIL for our students. And I don't know, for me, it was definitely intriguing, the ability to come to Wake, not only just about the alumni, the rich alumni that they have here, but also what they were looking to do. Like you said, with Open Doors, they hadn't signed that deal yet. So with showing me that and their plan for what they were going to do to make it easy for the student athletes to be able to take advantage of the NIL was something that I definitely was interested in and wanted to take advantage of.
Awesome. Andrew, and I'm kind of asking you more of the questions just because I know you have to leave early for now, but we have talked a bit about academics and how that plays into eligibility, not only for college sports, but in admissions and et cetera, et cetera. Do you mind sharing your academic story and how COVID affected you and how you've been able to climb out of that?
Sure. I think for me in high school, it was academics have been super important for my whole life, but especially in high school. I think if you want to play a sport at a collegiate level, doing well in high school is something that is really, really important for coaches. You know, that like I told a lot of people who are trying to get recruited and interested student athlete, like the coaches, that's the first thing that they ask. They'll call and say, hey, what are your grades and how, like, what are your grades in school? How are you in school? And I think as a coach, it would be to check people on and off of their list. So if you're a really good student in high school, and you're able to show them that, and I think that as a coach, you have a lot better idea of the type of student and the type of person that you're going to be dealing with. Someone that goes in and is able to take care of the business in the classroom, which is a really important part. And so for me, going to a great high school experience, but I was also able to complete a lot of AP credits as well. So I was surprised about how much that carried over into Delaware and how much that has helped me in my college career. But even with COVID, I feel like I finished up and did well in my high school career. But that was like the main thing that I would say is just how important it is if you want to play a sport at the collegiate level is you got to really focus, and it's not only just the sport, it's doing well in the classroom as well.
Yeah, I think, one thing that kids, especially young student athletes, need to realize is that, like, just because you're not doing well today doesn't mean you can't do well tomorrow or next term. And so what would you say about like second chances and kind of like, realization of how you can change?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, like, I was kind of talking about it from the coach's perspective a little bit about the academics, but also if a coach can see that the improvement as well, it's not only, so say you have a freshman year that you're going through. I know some people in here might have been going through COVID in their freshman year, and they would have had a tough time academically because of that. But if they see that you're able to try and make improvement, and I mean, I don't know, I just think that that's a good sign for someone who's trying to get better and improve at things, because coaches realize that life happens, and that things happen, and it's all about trying to improve and what's ahead of you, and not necessarily what happened in the past.
Yeah, Darby, what experiences as a parent and watching your children's peers and your students at Fusion, are there things that you've seen where kids have been able to kind of dig themselves out of holes, and how do they use those resources to do that?
I think the most important thing is asking for help, right? So knowing how to ask for help and not viewing it as a weakness, it's actually a strength. And so I think that's a big part of it. There are so many resources out there now to support our students, whether it's Fusion or otherwise. What we see at Fusion, and in fact, Andrew's little brother right now is doing one-to-one tutoring at Fusion for some of his classes at high school. And so, I think that we see students who just need that extra little bit of help to get them over the edge. I also think being in the one-to-one classroom, one of the things that we've seen is helping students know how to advocate for themselves and have conversations with teachers. It sets them up for great success when they go to college, to know how to communicate with a professor, building a relationship with them. Andrew could tell you countless stories of how much it's benefited him to not just go and sit in class, but then also talk to the professor and be able to do that. But it's a journey, and making sure that along the way that you're asking for help, that you're reaching out to those resources, whether it be from your local school, the resources that are in your community, or from any of us here today.
Yeah, and one thing I would love to point out is that for school staff, parents who are listening, every child learns differently. And oftentimes they make assumptions, and adults will make assumptions as well about eligibility or ability to play at the next level, or ability to get into certain schools. And what we want to make sure is that we're not making assumptions and we're actually looking for the answers. And that's why we're all here to provide resources. But being proactive about eligibility and checking your honest game report, or having your students understand what they need to do, giving them those short-term goals and motivation, right? A lot of our student athletes are focused on practice and the game, and school is a side thing. Even if they know that it's important, it might still be a side priority for them. And for us, we want to meld them together and help them understand that they go together, and they can't be thought of as independent things. Andrew, if you could give a student athlete, who's in high school today, or a coach or an AD or a counselor, a tip on, how to reach their goals, what would be the most important thing that you would say?
For me, I would say academically, it would be just showing up. I mean, actually, I would just say in general, just showing up. You got to show up. You owe it to yourself to show up every day. Ones that's you can control, the things that you can control, which are your attitude and your ability to show up. So going to class and just being there is honestly half the battle, especially once you get to college. It's you might struggle a little bit on the test, or struggle with some assignments or anything like that, but you are showing that the teacher that you care, you show up, and you're putting in extra and anything extra to be able to complete what you need to do. I would say that the biggest advice is just showing up, and you owe that to yourself.
Great advice. And we've talked about doing well in school, applying yourself, showing up for class. Let's not forget to also ensure we're taking the right classes in high school. Right now, with the test scores being waived for NCAA initial eligibility, your classes that you are taking are so much more important. And for admissions as well, they're going to be asking, are you taking rigorous courses? Are they NCAA approved? And not every class is approved at every school. So every school has their own list of approved classes. So check in when you're choosing your classes for next year, when you're choosing summer school classes, to make sure those are going to get you the NCAA credit you deserve. Tim, this question's for you. We've talked about academics, and that's one thing that is considered during recruiting and NIL partnerships. What are some of the things that are considered during the sponsorship partnership discussion?
Well, on the side of the brands that want to associate their brand with an athlete, remember, the reason that they're doing that is because they're trying to increase market share or sales for their products, whatever those might be. And so what they want to do is they want to associate their brand to somebody who, when a potential customer of theirs sees that person, it creates some brand affinity, right? And so what they look for are the things that Andrew's been talking about, and people that you can trust, people that have demonstrated that they have abilities to get things done, and they're associated with something that somebody has affinity towards. So what we see is a lot of the, if you take football off the table, almost 70% of the NIL deals that you're seeing across the country are female athletes doing social media endorsements for different products, hair products, clothing, apparel, things like that. And what those brands do is they look at the overall person, because they don't want to take the risk of associating with somebody who potentially could have a big problem. Something happens, late at night, or they get into some trouble. So what they're looking for are all of the signals that this is somebody that you can trust. It's not going to cause a problem. And part of that is, do they go to class? Do they, do they have, what do their grades look like? Have they been in trouble in the past? What things do they connect to on their social media? So anything that you interact with on social media is recorded, and that follows you everywhere you go for the rest of your life. And so it's really important to try to figure out, how am I going to present myself as a person that a brand would want to associate to, that brand is something that I want to be connected with because it's something that I'm interested in or support or whatever it is, and that people will then link those two things to help that business, do better. Those are the things that they're looking for. And all the things that Andrew are talking about are very important to that decision.
Yeah, financial aid is a big hot button topic and it's very confusing, right? Like people think there's a lot of misconceptions. Oh, if I'm a college athlete playing on a scholarship, it's a full ride. That's not true necessarily, right? There's a head count versus equivalency sports, but then also if I play college sports, I'll get NIL money. Again, not necessarily true. Or if I play D1, I'll definitely get NIL money versus NAIA or D3 or JUCO. Whereas the first NIL contract was with an NAIA student athlete, right? So I'd love actually each of you to talk about the financial aid impacts, if any, right? For you, Andrew, and then Darby, is that something you considered as a parent? And then Tim, when a high school student athlete is getting NIL, if it's not approved in their state, how would that affect their financial aid opportunities? So Tim, why don't I start with you? If you're a high school student athlete and you're thinking about taking NIL money, how might that affect your financial aid at college?
So let's remember, NIL is just doing a job, right? It's no different than working at the local McDonald's or being a waitress or a bar, not a bartender, but a waitress or a server at a restaurant. It's a job and you're going to get paid for that job. And the money that you earn is going to be part of your overall earnings. And to the extent that it would affect your financial aid, number one, NIL money wouldn't affect scholarship money, right? It has no relationship to that. From a financial aid perspective, it would impact your family's earnings. So that might have some impact on the type of financial aid you can get. For Pell Grants, the same thing, right? So if your expected family contribution will be calculated based on what your parents make and you make. So I do know one student athlete that took a $5,000 NIL deal in high school. And then as a result of that, it put his family over the threshold, which I think is $39,000 a year in earnings. And then that student lost $2,000 a year in Pell Grant money, right? And so if you think about the fact that he took $5,000, had to pay $2,000 in taxes. So for $3,000, they gave up almost $12,000 in tax-free money in college. It was a bad decision. Right. But nobody had explained that to those folks. So that's when you want to think about NIL, it's just like any other job. And the money that you're going to earn, you'll get, most of the time it's a 1099 because it's an independent contractor status. And that in January, you're going to get a 1099 from that company saying, we paid this student athlete this much money, and then they're responsible for the taxes that come with it. And it's not only money that you get paid, but it's also gifts in kind. If you're doing a deal for Reebok, and they give you a pair of shoes that are worth $500, that $500 is a taxable item as well. So just we need to be thoughtful about how those things might affect financially and Pell Grants from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's important to because I think a lot of people just think scholarship money and scholarship money, right? Like scholarship is a scholarship, but it's segmented in so many different fashions that it can get really confusing. Darby, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, it just helps to have experts and to really seek out before you're doing these things, getting advice from folks, because it's so easy to not realize, as Tim, as you were talking about the $5,000, I'm like, was that money spent before they realized that they had to pay the taxes on it too? So you're spending more money than you actually have because you didn't realize that you had to pay taxes on it. And that's one of the things that when parents come and talk to me about this and ask questions, I'm like, just remember anything over, what is it, $400 or something like that is taxable. So you have to make sure that you're taking care of that and that you're prepared for that because it is often 1099 and it's not taken out. So that's just one of the big cautions. But, when it comes to scholarship, I think it also is, my kids both are playing in head count sports, so they are full scholarships. But you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. And so some of the things where some schools will actually make you an offer for a scholarship, but they don't tell you it's only for 1 year. You're only guaranteed for 1 year. Elizabeth actually redshirted at Purdue. So as soon as we knew she was redshirting, we actually made sure that she's got 5 years of scholarship instead of 4. So just things like that, being really aware when you're in the process of don't just get handed a document and sign it. Make sure you read it and you know what you're actually signing.
Yeah, and that's true for so many things, and it's difficult for young people who are jumping in and making adult decisions. One thing I just want to make a note, head count sport is a full ride scholarship if you are offered. Not everyone on a college team that is a head count sport is on scholarship. And there's only for men, it's football and basketball, and for women, it's basketball, gymnastics, tennis, and basketball. And volleyball, sorry, yeah. And so all the other sports are equivalency, where the coach can choose to give out pieces of scholarships up to the amount that's given, and not all programs give the maximum amount they're able to. So Andrew, when we talk about your decision-making process with whether or not you take advantage of NIL, I understand you're on a full ride, so you don't need to worry about, pieces of, other aid that you may be giving up. But, how do you think about which NIL deals you want to take and accept and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think NIL is not only about the deals, but also something that I've thought that was pretty cool was being able to create your own merchandise line. So that's something that I took advantage of, and I have that as well. That you earn proceeds, but there are certainly a bunch of different companies out there that are trying to do that, and they'll help you with it. But then you could also, if it's like Tim was saying, that you have to work for it. So the NIL is something that will work for you. So if you're willing to put in the hours and being able to try and create an entire merchandise line yourself from scratch, and do all of the inventory and do everything for it, then you can earn all of the money back from it and be able to make a lot of money from doing the NIL. It's kind of something for me that I've realized is how much effort and how much time that you want to put into the NIL is how much rewards and how many benefits that you will reap from it. And so I felt like for me, being able to have someone help me create a merchandise merchandise line was something that was really cool for me to be able to have a couple of shirts, have a couple of jackets and pants with my branding and stuff on it, which has been really cool to see. So that was pretty fun.
That's awesome.
I would just say it's a great point. One of the things that we miss a lot is the fact that NIL is a great life skills development opportunity, particularly in the high school and college level, where kids are basically creating their own company, me.com. They're negotiating their own contracts. They're managing their own budget. They're having to do their ROI and figure out how they're going to manage stuff. And one of the things that student athletes talk about is their inability to do internships while they're a student athlete because they're always involved in sports, and they can't go take advantage of internships in the summer at the big companies. But now with NIL, we can actually put together a resume that says, not only was I an intercollegiate athletic, not only did I go to college and graduate, not only did I play Division I basketball, I also started my own business. And so at some point in time, when Andrew's done playing in the NBA, he's going to have to go get a regular job, right? Or maybe not, who knows? But only 4% of student athletes in college play in the professional leagues. So the rest of us have this great opportunity to create this career advancement, life skills capability, so that when we go and compete for jobs in the market after college, we can have that type of resume as well. And I think that's at the high school level, I think it's really important as well, that it's another great way for kids to learn how to build a digital presence and do all those kinds of things. So just a thought on Andrew's comment there.
Yeah, it's a really promising opportunity for young people who are working really hard on and off the field, in and out of the classroom, and they're balancing a lot, right? So I can only imagine all the distractions you already have in college, and now you also have this opportunity to make money, which is really difficult to pass up. I'm curious, there's a lot of different ways to get paid for NIL. right? Direct payment, free products, free services. What do you think, just like anecdotally from your peers at school, is the most common way that kids are getting paid?
I would say is probably free products. I've seen that a lot. Even back throughout my time at Delaware as well, a lot of obviously you guys know the Barstool Sports thing that went out. A lot of people tried to sign up and they let everybody be a Barstool athlete and everything like that. But there are other companies. Cuts was another big company that does a lot of that. But a lot of times those types of companies are just sending a couple shirts and asking them to send the Instagram story when they get it, and they're able to get that stuff for free. So I feel like that has been the most common way for people to get recognized by their Instagram or Twitter or their following that they have on there, and trying to just build their brand through these, student athletes and their followings that they have by giving them publicity for their certain brands. So
Right, because these
Andrew, you guys had a pretty interesting situation this year, though, with one of your players who got a different type of opportunity. Do you want to talk about Tyree for a sec?
Yeah, sure. So one of my teammates who was the ACC Player of the Year this year, and his name's Tyree Appleby, and so he had some great success on the court this year. But Applebee's, the company, and tried to take advantage, and he reached out a couple of times through Instagram DMs and things like that. But then it's actually pretty cool. He was able to do a commercial with Applebee's and this huge publicity deal. He has Applebee's shirts of spelling, because his name is spelled Appleby with a Y instead of Applebee's with 2 E's. So it's something that they're trying to make a play on the name, and try to have a couple commercials on Instagram, a couple of long videos, and he was able to get direct payment from Applebee's. Well, that's a pretty amazing thing. I know everybody loves their Applebee's, so it was great for him to see that, and we were able to go and be at our local Applebee's and be there with him while he got his commercials shot and everything like that. So it's pretty cool, not only for him but also for us and the team to kind of experience something, an NIL deal on that kind of level, that national level.
Tim, Andrew mentioned in-kind payments. How does that work with taxes? And if you're in high school and you're getting a lot of in-kind products, how would that affect your financial aid?
If the amount goes over $400 in the course of one calendar year. And so the way that would happen is if somebody gave you some stuff and they recorded that and then provided you with a verification like a 1099 that you received it, then you would have the obligation to actually pay taxes on that. The other thing to think about is if you're getting those things, you do have expenses, right? You do have expenses that you incur by doing whatever it is that you do. And so sometimes you can write off the taxes against those expenses. But as Darby was talking about, it's really important to have a good financial advisor. Even, it may be that somebody gives you a t-shirt and never records it and you never know. But if you're starting to get into services and stuff that are more valuable, you may see that.
We have some questions in the chat that would be great to answer. With testing not being a requirement for NCAA, can colleges still require test scores for admission? Yes. So kids get very confused during the recruiting process. I thought I don't need tests anymore. They're waived for eligibility, and most colleges are test optional. Why is the coach asking me for my test scores? So test scores can be used to get financial aid, right? Like there can be automatic scholarships given based on a test score that you've received. And a lot of those are public. So if you go to the school website, they'll publish that. And sometimes that coach might be like, great, you'll get the scholarship for the SAT and I don't have to take it out of my athletic budget to give to you. But even if they're test optional, they might want it as a piece of your application, right? Because in the end, you still have to be admitted to college. And that coach still needs to encourage you to submit the best application package possible. And if your test score is high enough for their admission minimums, they would like it. So a lot of people are thinking, well, I don't need to take test scores anymore. However, tests anymore, they can still really benefit your journey. So consider it. And if you're going to take it, prepare for it, because that will help you in the long run, possibly. But you have to weigh things like mental health and schedules and money and all the things, right? So I think one of the first questions was, how would you support a student athlete with mental health? Because there are a lot of challenges. We actually did a webinar last summer on mental health, so you can look that up and we can send that out. But Andrew, how have you been able to balance all of the challenges and stay kind of well adjusted?
I would say there's a lot going on, but for me, something that has been able to work is when I go home and get away from school and things that I'm really just at home or in my dorm or at my apartment or things, I kind of just try and focus on and stay present in the moment, just focus on those things, spend time with some friends. And personally, for me, my faith has become something that has been able to really help me. And when I got to college, I was lucky to be able to they at both places I've been at, Delaware and Wake Forest, they have something. It was athletes InterVarsity or athletes in action. So it's a group of athletes that are meet once a week in faith-based group, and we're able to kind of hang out, and it's kind of a spot for athletes to go to kind of decompress, not focus on all of the other stressful things that are going on in their life at the time, and really be able to kind of be there and for an hour and not really focus about anything else, and get into the word. And it's been great for both places for me. That's one thing that I've kind of been able to take advantage of, and has really helped me.
That's awesome. And so Andrew seems wise beyond his years. I mean, he knows where to find his community, and, like this concept of finding people who can support you, where you can just be yourself, is so key. Tim, you had mentioned, now I'm forgetting what I was going to say. There's another question here. If a student has a full ride scholarship, is it recommended to apply for financial aid? So, Darby, I'm going to kick this question to you, but the coach is probably going to ask you to fill out your FAFSA no matter what, right?
Exactly. They ask you to fill it out absolutely no matter what. And, both Andrew and Lizzie had some Ivy League schools. They were lucky enough to be really strong academically. And so the Ivy League schools don't have scholarships. And so that FAFSA form became really, really important. And so all of the schools asked us to complete it. I think it's something that is valuable to do because you don't know what's going to happen. And so having the safety net of having completed that, knowing you'll know what you're eligible for and what type of aid you could get is a really important and positive thing to have in your pocket. The next thing you know, a coach leaves from the university and your child decides they don't want to play for the new coach. Like, there's just so many things that happen after you get there. I think it's an important part of the process. And as you said, coaches all ask you to fill it out.
Yeah, for students thinking about joining the portal, transfer portal, we're dropping some blogs about it because there are a lot of things to consider when transferring and before you enter the portal. But Tim, remember what I was going to ask you? There was a question in the chat. What is one of the biggest differences in NIL policy across different states? Have you seen?
One second before he goes, yeah. I got to run to class. So I just wanted to say thank you for the time, and it was a pleasure being here, and good luck to everybody on their endeavors, and hope that you guys do well in school and are able to make it to that next level. Keep working hard.
Thanks, Andrew. Have a good one. Good luck.
That's awesome.
Great young person.
Got to go to class. Sorry.
Love it.
I think just to answer your question, Joyce, so every state, at the college level, every university puts together its own policies and procedures. And depending on what the law is in that state about NIL, it has to conform to the state law in the state. Most states have written NIL specific laws for college athletes. A few states have not, and a few states have rescinded their laws. So at the college level, it's going to be the policies and procedures at your university right now. Now, there's a testimony going on today in Congress about NIL and ways to create a common practice across the board, and we can talk about that if we want later. At the high school level, it's the High School Athletic or Activities Association in each state, which governs whether or not a student athlete can participate in name, image, and likeness. All of them in their bylaws have amateur requirements that student athletes need to be amateurs. They can't play pro sports. They can't do this. And in the states that have allowed NIL, what they're doing is they're amending the language around amateur status and saying that a student has to be an amateur, but that doesn't prevent them from using their name, image, and likeness for endorsement type opportunities. As long as they don't use their school logos, use school facilities, do it during school events or official team activities, and don't have things like alcohol, firearms, sexually oriented businesses, right? So there's some restrictions on what those student athletes can do, but every state's different and it's its own entity. And the way to find out what your state or your situation is go to the Eccker website, click on the resource hub. There's an interactive map. You can go to, say it's Kentucky, you could click on Kentucky and it'll have a link to the bylaw specifically for that state. So if there's any, and if you scroll down on Kentucky, you can also find the policies and procedures for the University of Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, all of those are listed as well. So that's where you can go to find out what the specifics are for each state.
And there's another question that piggybacks right on top of that. How are high schools preparing athletes to be NIL ready if the states are different? High schools can partner with Eccker Sports to bring these resources to their families. Same goes with, high schools can partner with Fusion to provide them one-to-one online learning or in person. We, Honest Game, partners with high schools as well to provide dashboards on academic eligibility. We also we'll have an ability where you can have teams where you can manage your NIL kids or your kids who are playing college sports. And so using resources to then educate your families is really key, because what's happening right now is people are going on Google and looking up, where can I find this information? And there's a lot of, unfortunately, false information or outdated information out there on the web. And what we want to do is ensure that you're going to trusted resources, like using a Fusion Global where their classes are NCAA approved, versus taking a class where you're not sure if it's NCAA approved and then you got an A and you're super happy about it, or your student is, and then you find out later that class isn't going to count towards eligibility, right? The Honest Game report is going to track every class you take and track your eligibility in each subject area and the GPA, and when did you take it, right? These are resources that are really important to support you, because we don't have enough time in the day, right? You don't have enough time in the day to research all the NIL rules in your state, or what's a trusted online learning platform that's going to allow my kid to really spend their time wisely, because they are really oversubscribed and they are dealing with stress and all the different opportunities. And there's worry, right, that they're going to disappoint you or disappoint themselves or not reach their full potential. And how do we, as the adults around them, support that journey to ensure that they're able to take advantage?
Laura asked an interesting question here. Does a student follow the NIL laws in their state or of residence, or where the college and university is located? It's a good question. If you're a high school student athlete, it's about the state law or it's about the high school bylaws where you're participating. So if you live in Texas, you have to follow what the UIL says to be eligible. And that's the thing about name, image, and likeness. Now, there are a lot of student athletes, and I know one specifically here in Austin who got recruited to go to school at Clemson. And they were trying to figure out how to do an NIL deal while they were still in school. And they were going to put the money in a bank account in South Carolina. And they thought, well, that's fine, that, you know, because it's in a different state. But the UIL viewed that as a violation of their amateur policy. And so if the kid would have done that, would have been ineligible. So what you really need to focus on, to answer the question specifically, it just depends on your situation. If you're a high school student athlete, you have to be focused on the bylaws of your association. If you're going to a college, then it's all about what's going on at that college and its policies and procedures. And if you're in the process of being recruited, so you're in between those two things, make sure that you don't do anything that's going to violate the policy of your high school athletic association that you would do at college. Now, the NCAA in a recent guidance came out and said that student athletes could not start to participate in NIL deals until they've actually enrolled on campus. So the idea that a high school kid could make NIL money before he gets to college is not accurate any longer.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and we're seeing that firsthand, Tim. So the students who are in fall sports, when they go to campus, to be enrolled in campus, you have to take a class. So now all of them are being required to take summer classes, at least one, if you're in a fall sport, so that you are an actual enrolled athlete and you can actually be part of all of those things and you don't have any missteps there.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're running out of time. I wanted to answer a couple more questions from the chat. One is, how can Honest Game and Fusion help meet academic eligibility? Do I need to leave my homeschool to take classes with Fusion?
So great question. We support both homeschool students and students who enroll with us. So we can offer credit bearing classes. Like if you're enrolled in a school locally and that's where you intend to graduate from, and you either want to get ahead or you need to retake a class to try to improve your grade and your GPA, we can do that with you through the courses that we offer. But we also enroll students full-time at our campuses and then also in Fusion Global, our virtual school. So what we're finding now is that students really want that flexibility to oftentimes be able to dedicate themselves to their sport more, and the traditional school doesn't work for them. And so some of the options that we have are really helpful for students who do that. And then we also have kids who are international. So we've got a couple of kids right now on the Barcelona soccer team that are overseas and are taking school, are doing their school program and will graduate from Fusion with us in order to have a US diploma. So lots of opportunities for kids, and happy to look at the, you said this earlier, Joyce, every student is so different. And so what we try to do, and I think what you've heard from, other folks on this call today, is to make it totally personalized. It's all about you, the student, and getting on a telephone call with you and kind of talking through those specifics and figuring it out.
And students who are taking standard school, maybe you're going to a public school in your town, you could also take a Fusion online class or a brick and mortar Fusion class on the side, and then you would send that transcript to the college separately from your own school, or have your transcript sent to NCAA as well for eligibility purposes. It can be a supplemental summer school class or another class you're taking during the year. From an academic eligibility standpoint with Honest Game, we will track your progress, even starting in 8th grade, freshman year, through high school, and then beyond. If you're going the junior college route and you want to transfer, and you want to see if you're entering JUCO as a non-qualifier versus a full qualifier, but providing those short-term goals, because your individualized report will show if you get A's, your GPA is this. If you get B's, your GPA is this. If you get C's, your GPA is this, because not all kids are A students. And for some kids, the C is the best they're going to do. And they need to understand that that will get them to where they need to go if they can meet those goals. So we're almost out of time. Okay. Let me throw up that Fusion QR code again. Somebody asked for that. We are recording this and we will send out a recording to all of our participants as well. Thank you to Tim and Darby so much, and Andrew, of course, for joining us. I think this was really informative and helpful. We'd love to hear from all of you. Please reach out with questions. Honest Game would love to partner with your school. We're in 20 plus states and really helping hundreds of thousands of student athletes consider the college pathway. And if it ends up not being the right pathway for them, maybe they'll have done better in school, and reach out to Eccker Sports and Fusion for your additional resources. Hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Darby. It was fun. It was fun to meet Andrew too. That was awesome.
Thanks.
That was really cool.